Michael Chandler has been waiting for this moment for 2 years. 2 years of watching other fighters get the calls he wanted. 2 years of Conor McGregor drama that went nowhere. 2 years of questions he had to answer with a smile while the frustration built underneath. And now he is standing on the White House lawn, fighting on the biggest card in UFC history. And he wants everyone to know this one is personal. Start with the context, because the context matters. When the White House card was announced, Chandler was not automatically on it. There was a period of genuine uncertainty. Conor McGregor went on national television and said he was fighting Chandler at the White House. Conversations happened behind closed doors, and then it all fell apart. Again, in the way that everything involving McGregor and Chandler has fallen apart for the last 3 years. What Chandler did next says everything about who he is. He did not complain publicly. He did not demand explanations. He threw himself into Madison Square Garden against Charles Oliveira on short notice, put on one of the most memorable performances of the year, even a loss, and then got back to work. That is not a man coasting on reputation. That is a man who genuinely believes the work is the answer regardless of the result. The opponent this weekend is Mauricio Ruffi. And Chandler's breakdown of that matchup is worth examining closely, because it reveals something important about how he thinks and how he fights. When asked about Ruffi's style, Chandler did not give the diplomatic answer that most fighters give in the pre-fight media cycle. He was direct. He said Ruffi looks like a guy who grew up watching MMA highlights on YouTube and decided he wanted to be that kind of fighter, that he is a man who sometimes looks like he is playing a video game inside the Octagon. And then Chandler made the specific distinction that defines his entire philosophy as a competitor. He said, "I am a hammer looking for a nail. Ruffi is a highlight reel looking for the perfect moment." And the question is what happens when the perfect moment never comes, when the oxygen gets sucked out of the cage, when the big shot lands and Chandler shakes it off and keeps walking forward, when everything the highlight reel was built on stops working. Chandler's belief is that he has been in that situation with better fighters than Ruffi and come out the other side. The resume supports that belief. He has fought for the UFC title. He has beaten former champions. He has been in the deepest waters this sport produces and survived. Ruffi has not. And in Chandler's mind, that difference is not cosmetic. It is structural. But there's a layer to this fight that goes beyond the competitive matchup, and it is the layer that Chandler himself keeps returning to when the conversation goes anywhere near the personal. He has not won a fight since 2021. That is a number that sits in the background of everything, not because it defines him. His commercial value, his visibility, his ability to fill arenas and generate attention have all remained remarkable despite the record. But because Chandler is, at his core, a competitor who came up in a sport where wins and losses are the only currency that truly matters. He said it directly when asked. He is always thinking about it. He has a system. He has a plan. And he believes that system and that plan, applied correctly on Sunday night against an opponent he has studied and understands, produces the outcome he has been working toward for the last year. There is something else worth addressing honestly, and it is the question of the Conor McGregor fight and whether it still makes sense. Chandler's answer was carefully measured, but the underlying message was clear. He said it is a fight that is already built. Hundreds of hours of footage from the Ultimate Fighter, photo shoots, video shoots, sound bites, a training camp that was supposedly happening when the injury occurred 2 weeks before the scheduled press conference. All the infrastructure for one of the most commercially valuable fights available in the sport exists and has existed for years. Chandler did not say he desperately wants it. He said it makes sense. And then he said what he always says when a door closes in front of him. He pivoted to the next available door and walked through it without complaint. That is either the most psychologically healthy approach to a frustrating situation in sports history, or it is a performance of equanimity from a man who has simply learned that the alternative, public frustration, demands, ultimatums, produces nothing except bad optics. Either way, the discipline it requires is genuine and significant. What Dana White said about this card deserves direct acknowledgement. He openly admitted that he hates outdoor events. He does not want to do them. And he did this one anyway because the platform demanded it. That admission is important because it speaks to the scale of what is actually happening at the White House. When the person who runs the most successful combat sports organization in history overrides his own preferences because the moment is too significant to pass up, The fighters on that card are competing on a stage that has no historical precedent. Chandler understands this better than almost anyone else on the card because he has been chasing significance his entire career. Madison Square Garden 3 times. Fight of the Year candidates on consecutive cards. A debut knockout that became one of the most replayed moments in recent UFC history. He has always known that the biggest platform multiplies everything. The win, the performance, the statement. And now the biggest platform in the sport's history has been handed to him in the final years of his career. The timing is almost too cinematic to be real. The outdoor element has received attention this week as a legitimate variable, and Chandler's response to it was characteristically direct. He trained in South Florida. He has fought outside before. He has competed injured, sick, in the loudest buildings and the quietest ones. And his actual position on the weather, the heat, the potential for unexpected conditions is simple. He likes his chances with a bug in his eye better than his opponent does without one. That is not bravado for the camera. That is a man who has built his competitive identity on the belief that physical and mental toughness is a variable that resolves uncertainty. That when all the preparation is equal, the fighter who is more willing to embrace discomfort wins. His entire career has been a test of that belief. The results have been mixed in terms of outcomes, but the belief itself has never wavered. The deeper philosophical question that came up in the media availability this week was the one about the top. A reporter asked Chandler whether the White House might represent the top he has been referencing for years, the destination behind the "see you at the top" mantra that has defined his public identity throughout his UFC run. And Chandler gave the most honest answer he has probably given in a press conference in years. He said yes, this is the top of his career thus far. And then he immediately reframed what the top means. He said it is not about the belt or the money or the bright lights. It is about becoming the version of yourself that you have been chasing. About holding a standard every single day and watching it compound over time into something that looks, from the outside, like a career. He said something that is easy to dismiss as motivational language, but lands differently when you look at the actual evidence of his journey. In a win, he gets promoted. In a loss, he gets promoted. In a fight that falls through, he gets promoted. The trajectory has been relentlessly upward despite the losses, despite the Conor situation, despite the record. That is not luck. That is a man who has understood something about the sport, about visibility, about brand, about showing up fully regardless of outcome, that most fighters never figure out. Here is what actually matters going into Sunday night. Chandler is 38 years old. His body has absorbed significant damage over a career built entirely on violence. His last one came nearly 4 years ago. Ruffy is young, fast, and genuinely dangerous in ways that the video game framing should not obscure. The question the fight actually answers is whether the Chandler who has been in training for the last year, with a full camp, with the hunger of a man who has been waiting for this moment, with a specific motivation of fighting on the biggest stage in the sport's history on America's 250th birthday, can produce the kind of dominant, convincing performance that changes the conversation around his record and his future in a meaningful way. Not just a win, a statement. Because a close decision over Ruffy on a card this size does not move the needle the way a finish does. And Chandler, more than any other fighter on this card except possibly the main event, needs the needle to move. He said it himself. This one is for him. Not for the fans, not for the UFC brass, not for the narrative. For him. And when Michael Chandler says something like that publicly, the historical record suggests you should probably take him at his word.